Welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring all things wine with you. We are your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lenzi, and you can find us on our website, thewww.wine. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring trending topics in the wine world. I'm here with my co-host, Mark. How are you today, Mark?
Everything is great, Cam, and you?
I am pretty well. Today we have a special guest who is a local to us in the Boston area. Today we are speaking with Gabrielle Malina, who is the owner of First Crush Boston, which is a wine pop-up company. So welcome to the show, Gabrielle.
Thank you for having me.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your business, about what First Crush Boston's all about?
Yeah, so I've been running First Crush for about 2 years now, and I launched it because for a few reasons. One, I had a bunch of ideas for wine parties that I wanted to throw, and I don't have enough space in my own house to be doing those on the regular. And so I started hosting these parties, selling tickets, and just kind of seeing how people responded to the kind of format of music, wine, like a curated wine list, snacks, often all connected by a theme. So maybe Spanish wine, or we've done Serbian, Bulgarian, and Georgian wine with a DJ playing Balkan folk music. And people have responded really well, to the point that I'm actually now in the process of opening a brick and mortar wine bar in Union Square that will be called First Crush. And that's because that pop-up model is tiring and it was time for my own space so that I could host more of what I want to host, and not have to like lug all my stuff around all the time. And then another kind of reason for First Crush is to create more accessible spaces for people to try new wines that maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable trying in a restaurant or a bar setting, when maybe there's some pressure to order quickly, or you don't want to ask for more than a taste of one wine. And so the model in most of the events has been a lineup of at least 4, but often up to like 8, in some cases 10 different wines, often in a ticketed format where your ticket is all inclusive. And so you can come up and taste and try all of the wines, or in a by the glass, model where we price the glasses really affordably and encourage people to, we'll pour you sample taste of everything, and you can ask questions, and it just like depressurizes exploring wine, and you get to do it in a fun social setting rather than like going to a seated tasting or seminar, which is good and important. But if you're not in the wine industry, those types of events are not like the most exciting things to go to. So both in terms of it, First Crush kind of inspired both to make wine more accessible, but also to make it really fun and social and bring your friends and try new stuff.
And what was your background in wine, Gabrielle? Do you have any experience in the wine world, or you just all of a sudden decide you want to do this?
My background is academic to begin with. I moved to Boston to get my PhD, actually, which I did do, but quickly decided that academic world was not the right fit for me, and got interested in wine during grad school, actually. When Rebel in Somerville opened, I got introduced to natural wine there and got really interested in learning more. And I've always been interested in food and that kind of thing. So it's similar to what my like long-term interests have been, but finally kind of found a hook in wine. So after grad school, I bopped around. I was a cheesemonger. I worked at Celeste and L'Oreal doing the wine programs, focused on South American wine, and then went to the Koji Club for a bit where I learned about sake, and then started taking WSET wine courses to sort of get up to speed quickly, since historically my background was not in wine. And now I'm actually in 2 weeks taking my WSET diploma exam. So I will be sort of sommelier certified if you count the WSET, but I've only really been working in wine since like 2021 or so, 2022.
Sounds like, I hate to say this, before we started recording, Mark was like, I'm surprised you haven't bumped into her. And I can see why, because we do sort of have a similar background where it's like we came from academia, and then we got kind of bit by the wine bug, and then kind of went off and was like, oh, you know what? This is kind of what I really would love to do.
Yep,
Because it really does like get into you.
Yes.
But I think that this concept is really fantastic. And Mark and I have been sort of noodling for the last, I don't know, couple of years about how can wine be made more accessible
Yep.
to people who are sort of just casual drinkers or younger folks
Yep.
or just are looking for something different.
Yep.
And I really like this concept that you've got going here.
Thank you. Yeah, the younger generation thing is, I mean, as anybody that thinks about wine or drinks it and pays attention to the industry knows that everybody's sort of freaking out about Gen Z not drinking enough wine. And I think overall wine consumption levels maybe are down in the United States, maybe like across generations or on average. And every time, I mean, I believe the macro trends, of course, but in my experience, anecdotally, I guess, no problem getting young people to come to parties where we pour wine. And, I don't pay close attention to like who is asking the most questions or who seems the most interested, but they certainly are interested in it. I think like in the course of the conversation about these trends, like a lot of people have been saying that, oh, maybe they're just interested in drinking it in a different way and like being more thoughtful about what they drink. And so in that case, being able to ask questions or at least provide context about where the wine comes from is like very much in line with that curiosity. So I don't know that it's not like a silver bullet, but I do think that like making it accessible and making it fun, like will go a long way to bringing new drinkers in or keeping young drinkers interested, because there's just so much within a glass of wine that you can talk about if someone wants to know, or even if they don't, they might listen to you and think I didn't care about wine. Oh, but now I do. Like, it's actually really interesting.
It's interesting. You said you're getting the young people to show up for events, and a lot of your events include DJs, artists, chefs. Is it the environment you think that's drawing in younger crowd, or you think they're fine, or just combination of both? And is that something you're going to kind of bring into your retail environment as well?
Yes. I think it's many things. I think one thing I've heard from people, which it was also my experience in Boston, is Boston is a tough place to do fun things in general, because it's just, you need a lot of permits and you need a lot of licenses and it's expensive and rent's expensive, blah, blah, blah. And so the pop-up model was actually great because I didn't, in a lot of cases, I didn't have to deal with all of that. And so I could do these fun kind of more niche things and people showed up, and I think people were curious about the wine, but I think people would have come even if it was not marketed as a wine event. I think people are looking for social events and spaces that are not a restaurant or a bar. And unlike, I think, other cities, it's just hard. There are just not that many of these types of events or venues in the area. And so as a pop-up, the nice thing is you can kind of bop around to different venues. And so I think that's part of what people have enjoyed about my events is like the venue does change. We do repeat venues, but it's fun to, you're like, okay, I kind of know what to expect. There's gonna be wine, there's gonna be music, there'll be fun people, but like the venue's gonna be different. The vibe is different each time based on the venue. So I think that's part of it, is just like getting to experiment with different concepts based on different spaces and different energy, and different people come to different events or based on the venue. So that's been cool. And obviously having a brick and mortar, you can't play around with the venue as much, but I am definitely planning to basically take the model of DJ, pick a theme from a region of the world that makes wine and do a DJ music, DJ, food, snacks from that region, and have a wine list that reflects that region. And that's something I'm actually most excited to do that in my own space, because it's just going to be so much easier to plan them when I don't have to like scrounge for a venue every time. But I think that also just like you can come on a Thursday night or whatever and just come for a glass of wine, and it'll be a mellow night, but you can also come on Saturdays, every once in a while for these parties that make it feel like a different experience than just coming to a bar. So I am planning to do that. I'm applying for all the permits to make that possible. But yeah, I'm really excited to have my own space finally, where I can just do whatever themes or whatever formats I want without having to go through the process of securing a venue every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That certainly is one of the hard things about having a beverage business is, navigating all the permits and then the space and all that stuff. So kudos to you for really getting this going.
Yeah, you gotta be committed.
Yeah, you do. So I had a question about how do you focus on wine education when you have these other things going on? Like if there's music and DJs, how are you how are you getting like information about the wine across to people?
It's a bit of sort of reading the room slash reading the people that you're talking to, but for the most part, at a minimum, we have menus printed that, have the wines listed. And so that's simply so that someone can take a picture or take it home with them and remember what they like.
Hmm.
But then more directly, like we usually engage people in a conversation about what we're pouring. So for example, my friend Shannon runs East West Wines, which she would actually be a great person to talk to. It's a single woman importing company. She focuses on wines from the Balkans, Eastern Europe, so Serbia, Bulgaria, Hungary, Croatia. I might be missing one. I think she's just adding Lebanon actually. And those at the events where, for example, we're pouring those wines, people know nothing really. Most people have no baseline for wines from that region, and so we will always include where what region it's from on the menu, and then we usually do a quick this is Serbian Tomjanica. That it's a aromatic grape that's going to be sort of similar to a Muscat or a Sauvignon Blanc. It'll be really floral, and at the beginning of the night, we're like explaining more. We have more time to sort of tell them about the winemakers or the region. But as the night goes on, it very much transitions to just like people coming back for what they liked and going back to the dance floor. So in that format, it's a bit of we do kind of a baseline spiel when we're pouring, but then if someone asks, is interested and wants to know more, we're more than happy to explain. And then we also have formats where like the DJ, where it's less focused on a dance party and the DJ is a bit more ambient. And those are really, that setting is a little bit more conducive to, kind of wine education, like one-on-one with people while you're pouring them wine. And then I've also done seated dinners with wine pairings where you have a lot more time and this sort of structured around talking about the wine. Mm-hmm. So it sort of depends on the format, but we do, at a minimum, I make sure that when you're getting a wine poured in your glass, that we're telling you where it's from, what the grapes are, what to expect in terms of a tasting note. But yeah, sometimes that's it. And sometimes people are interested and have time, and we have time to like tell them more.
You're listening to The Wonderful World of Wine, and we are your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. Our program is supported by Franklin Public Radio. You can find out more about us on our website, thewww.wine. Today's special guest is Gabrielle Malina. She is with First Crush Boston. You can find her at firstcrushboston.com. And we're back with Gabrielle, and I wanted to ask you about the wines that you use for events and the wines you plan to have in your retail store. Are you focused mainly on natural wines?
Yes, with a sort of wide-ish definition of natural wines, or more along the lines of like, you're not going to hit you over the head with the fact that it's natural wine, but for the most part, these are wines that are not really fussed with in the winery and good, like organic at a minimum farming in the vineyard. Sort of
I was just going to ask you to kind of define that for our listeners, because we've never really touched the subject much. So it's a term you hear a lot, but it's not really regulated in any way that you see. So it must be a battle for you when you tell people this is a natural wine, and the first thing they say is, what the heck is a natural wine, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because a lot of people that do come actually have a lot of experience with natural wine in that, they're going to wine bars around Boston, Cambridge, Somerville that tend to focus on natural wine. But I think with that comes sometimes a misconception about what the wine is going to taste like, what the wine is going to taste like, because sometimes there are many cases of natural wine that are a bit flawed in being a little bit too like yeasty or high volatile acidity or something like that. And I think if that's your experience with natural wine, it can turn people off to the idea. And so what I try to explain to people as simply as possible, it's not a simple topic, but it is basically that so much wine that we love is natural in the sense that people have been making it kind of in traditional ways in regions like Burgundy forever. They wouldn't call the wine a natural wine, but in terms of their methods, it is low, hands-off, low intervention, not adding chemicals to the wine or acidifying or adding sugar or whatever. Like they're not messing with it, I suppose. And the reason they can do that is because they're farming it, in a way that protects the soil and doesn't grow like massive yields of grapes that have low flavor concentration. So I try not to be dogmatic about it because it is sort of a spectrum and there's so many different decisions that a winemaker has to make in the course of making a wine. And sometimes they can do it in the most hands-off way and sometimes they can't, and that's okay. And so as you can hear, I'm I'm sort of still torn about how to like present it to people. But for the
that was what
wine,
I wanted to follow up with you on, because you
yeah,
mentioned flaws, and a lot of times someone will taste that natural wine and it might be some sort of volatility or like a reduction thing, and you're
yeah,
drinking it, you're thinking this is a good expression of that wine. How do you educate a
yeah,
person that no, your drink is a good wine? Like,
a good
does
wine.
it hurt you when someone says or doesn't understand it?
No, I mean, I will say in my 5 years or so of working in wine, I myself have kind of skewed away from those really, really volatile, acidic, the wines that taste like paint thinner or something, or have that Sharpie note or something like that. Like I actually really choose not to drink those wines much anymore. And so if someone complains about a wine tasting like flawed or something, absolutely not going to argue with them. I think there's a little bit of that if you drink natural wine, you do kind of get used to, and you realize like reduction, for example, can add a lot of complexity to a wine. There's also cases where it's way too much reduction. But I'm very sympathetic to people thinking that they don't like the really like aggressively natural wines. And the other thing about natural wine is that vintages are so different year to year. And so you might try it once and it doesn't have any of that. And then the next year it has a lot of that for whatever happened during fermentation. And so that is also part of it. It's just kind of being open to the variation and kind of thinking of it as maybe a feature rather than a reason to drink something from the grocery store that tastes exactly the same year after year.
That's a good way of explaining it. The differences are so much more noticeable and variable from vintage to vintage when you're talking about something with much less intervention
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
production of it.
Exactly. And I think that actually is really helpful for people. Sometimes you don't have the
Yeah.
bandwidth to go into that kind of detail. But when I was learning kind of the differences, like, oh, at a minimum, the not messing with it too much, you're sort of letting the conditions of the year and the harvest and the fermentation express themselves, and they'll never be exactly the same. And I think that's a real plus for natural wine because it adds some element of like excitement or discovery, even when you drink the same wine, but from two different vintages.
That's the fight I talk about all the time. You had mentioned where you can buy a huge brand and it's the same every year. And I say to someone, yeah, you've been drinking that brand for 20 years. Does it taste the same every year? Yeah. And I've said, how? How does
Yeah,
that
I don't think they
happen?
do
Think
that.
about it. Think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah,
And people
it's
just
a
don't grasp it. It
totally,
always baffles me.
totally. I agree with you completely.
It's such a good point. It's like, but why? Why does it always taste
Yeah,
the same?
yeah. I think wine gets kind of separated or divorced from the fact that it is a like agricultural product.
Hmm.
And like the weather matters so much and the climate of the area, but then the randomness of the weather that particular season. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, I mean, I'm not blaming anyone for not knowing that, but once you do understand that, it makes it so much more interesting and like the job of the winemaker is so much harder.
Well, just sort of this constant struggle, like Mark was just saying, about talking about wine with people and this sort of disconnect between certain styles of wine or certain brands of wine being a commodity product that always tastes the same, and then other ones that are more of this hands-on, you can really taste sort of the agricultural, whatever you want to call it, vagaries of the season.
Exactly.
And it's almost like sometimes we talk about two different products. Like we're talking about wine in general, but sometimes it feels like we're talking about two different things.
Yeah, completely. And I would also add to that part of another reason why I guess I gravitate towards natural wine is that I guess natural wine, and because it's natural wine, often it is made by small, producers.
Small
Maybe,
production, yeah.
yeah, maybe they're family run, maybe they're not, doesn't really matter, but small production, yeah, small production winemakers who often will focus on the native varieties that grow in their little region. And so instead of, California being all Chardonnay or all Cab, California is actually really interesting because of all the like random varieties that have ended up there over, waves of immigration, but like there's tiny little pockets of like Nebbiolo and stuff like that in California. And I think it's great to like explore beyond the kind of big name international varieties. And California is unique because it's relatively young, but then you go to like many parts of Europe, and Italy's a great example because they have like I don't even know how many indigenous varieties that don't grow anywhere else. I think the most in any country, any wine growing country in the world. And so you can just constantly, if you're open-minded and you're kind of seeking out these small production wines, you can try a new variety basically forever from Italy, or like the same variety that grows one way in Tuscany might grow a different way in Abruzzo, or I don't know, wherever. And that is cool. And that's what natural wine and these small winemakers are doing, is like preserving the traditions of the wine making practices, varieties in their little corner of the world. And if you just drink Chardonnay from the grocery store, like you're missing all of that complexity and variety.
Yeah, that's the excitement we try to generate in the wine world, but it's a battle. Getting punched in the face a lot over here, Gabriel. So one of the myths in the wine world as well is that you'll hear, "Oh, I never get a hangover if I drink natural wine." So have you ever had someone approach you and say, "I've tried that wine you suggested, and man, I felt good the next day, unlike when I drink
Yes.
this massive brand of Chardonnay and I'm getting headaches all the time," right? What do you tell
Yeah,
them?
well, not cynical, I don't know if cynical is the right word, but the one response is to say, well, how much did you drink?
Yeah.
So that's always my response too. Did you
Yeah.
drink enough water?
Yeah, exactly. Did you eat enough food? How late did you
Yep.
stay up?
Yep.
And I don't know, honestly, that I have done any sort of like experiment with myself to really have an answer. I know people point to the sulfites, and the sulfites, and it is true that natural wine tends to have a lot less sulfites than conventional wine, but all wine has sulfites on some level because it's like part of the naturally produced during fermentation. And I have no idea. I haven't read the science, like if what the threshold is for amount of sulfites in a wine that would trigger like a headache or a worse hangover. I really don't know. Maybe it's that with conventional wine, they're adding a bunch of sugar potentially, but dry, then it's theoretically all getting fermented. I don't know. I don't really know. If it makes someone feel better about drinking natural wine, great. But my sort of response is like, yeah, maybe. But if you drink, 8 glasses of natural wine one night, like you're probably not going to feel good the next day.
Alcohol is still alcohol.
It's still alcohol. Yeah. Yeah.
And you talked about food. It's a good way to bring this into the
Mhm.
conversation. You've done a lot of events with chefs and had food. Is there any unconventional food pairing or something that has really stood out to you in the past that was like a perfect match, or you
Yeah.
thought something wasn't going to work and it just
Yes, the one that comes to my mind was a chocolate and wine tasting, and I
Oh boy.
controversially didn't pair. Well, I didn't do any dessert wines, no super sweet wine. So that was fun to like see what I could do with dry or almost, off dry wines.
You are talking Mark's language right now.
yeah.
And everyone's favorite was this amazing chocolate bar. The name of the chocolatier is Silver Whisk Bakery, and I believe she has a space in Waltham now. But at this point, she was also a pop-up, and we did a wine tasting, chocolate pairing thing at Rococo Floral in Union Square. And she makes a caramelized white chocolate with pork floss
Whoa.
chocolate bar, and I paired it with, I believe, an Amontillado sherry, and people were like losing their minds.
Wow. I can't even imagine. And
Yeah,
I
it
do a
was,
lot of pairings.
yeah, it was awesome. And then another one from that lineup that I think surprised some people was it like a milk chocolate. I forget what it had in it, maybe some cocoa nibs or something. And I did it with a dry rosé, bubbly rosé that maybe had like 2 grams of residual sugar, but it wasn't anything
Mm.
crazy. And people were really surprised that a chocolate, like a milk, it was milk, I believe, if I remember correctly, milk chocolate and a dry, but, pretty fruity rosé like worked. You didn't lose the rosé, the flavors of the wine didn't get blown out by the sweetness of the chocolate.
Hmm.
So that was nice. And then I'm trying to think, I feel like just recently, I had one. I don't think it was at my own event. It was at just somewhere, and it was like a revelation, but I'm forgetting. So maybe it wasn't that amazing.
It's so fun when those things happen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I love it because it's just usually something you would have never guessed. and it works really well.
And you talked earlier about how when you created these pop-ups, people were liking that it was a different type of venue, different type of event. But now it seems there's a lot of pop-ups happening around and all different types of. So
Yes.
what do you think is the scene now, and how are you going to keep like one-upping? It's something that
Yeah.
I always deal with because I'll do events and people say, well, why Kim and I would do wine and Girl Scout cookies? Well, why can't you do wine in this or wine in that? Is it
Yeah.
that way with you too? You always have to come up with
Yeah.
another idea or another place.
Yeah, a little bit. I have definitely felt that, but I also think people seem to really respond to like the really niche random stuff. So theoretically, there's just like endless options. Once you like get more specific than Spain, for example, we're doing well, this doesn't totally fit the bill, but we're doing a party on, and it's an 80s band from Madrid called Mecano, and we're doing like wines from in and around Madrid. So we're getting a little bit more specific than Spain. But, I also really want to do I want to do a wine event with the wines of Western Spain. So Galicia, obviously Rias Baixas and Albariño, but there's lots of other fun stuff there. So I think in that sense, it's endless. You can pop around to all these little regions across the winemaking countries of the world. But yeah, I actually do think that since I started, there's like way more wine focused events and pop-ups happening, which is great because I don't think we're at the point where the market is like saturated by them yet. But yeah, there is a little bit of, gotta constantly be churning up some new ideas. But that's partially why I'm also excited to have my own wine bar space that will just hum along as a wine bar some of the time, and my business isn't solely dependent on having to come up with new ideas all the time.
As I was looking at your website, things like popped up in my brain where I was like, oh, well, I've seen wine in stand-up comedy and I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
wine in paint nights and like that
Yes.
kind of thing. So it's like all of these creative ideas to get people
Yeah.
to engage with wine while also doing something else. So it's not like,
Yes,
sitting at a desk
exactly.
and taking a wine class.
That's exactly right. And the craft paired with wine, like that concept, people have really responded well to.
Well,
And I
just
think,
like the whole crafting thing, even
yeah,
without wine, it's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
super popular.
Like
So
taking
hey,
off
throw in a
again.
glass of wine.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
that is something that format is really easy to play around with. Like as long as you know an artist or someone who can teach the craft and you have
Hmm.
space, you can do those a lot, and I will because those have been so popular. But again, yeah, I think that people appreciate a space where you can enjoy wine, but you're also doing something creative
Yeah.
at the same time. It's not just going and sitting at a bar. You're creating something or using your brain in a different way.
What would be like your dream event to host for First Crush? Like,
Well, I did do a paella night last August in an really awesome outdoor venue. And just for logistical reasons, we could really cap it at I forget how many people we had, maybe 32 people, and it was like a seated dinner. But like the whole thing was amazing. The venue was awesome. It was a good, it was like a nice summer night, and we had paella and we had a whole leg of jamon iberico. And I would love to be able to do that like times three, like have 100 people and have, I don't know how many paella pans we would need. We would need a lot.
That's a lot of paella.
Yeah, it's easy to do for a crowd as long as you have people to cook it. So yeah, I would love to do that and find a like an outdoor venue outside of the city where could do I'd love to do like well, actually, as I'm about to say this, it's reminding me of, I don't know if you're familiar with Maria and Juan Ma, who own Celeste, in La Real, the Peruvian restaurants in Cambridge and Somerville. But I worked for them, and they do it's called a pachamanca, and it's like an outdoor, you basically roast a bunch of meat in a like subterranean like oven. You dig a hole, heat stones up to like 900 degrees and bury the food with the stones, and then cover the whole thing up, and then uncover it when it's time. And they do like a cocktail hour, and you have pisco sours while you stand around the pit, and then the food gets unveiled and then served, and then they have wine pairings, and they don't actually have people camp on their property, but that would be cool. I want to do like a full day wine eating event and encourage people to pitch tents and stay overnight.
I think that sounds awesome.
Yeah, like somehow find someone to roast a whole lamb on a spit.
Yeah, your passion for wine goes beyond,
Yes.
it
Yes.
leads to unlimited ideas. That's like
Yeah.
Kim and I do in the show. It's like we have just so many ideas for guests and conversation. It never
Yes. It's
ends. It
endless.
really
It's
doesn't.
endless. And that's why I love it. Yeah.
Oh, and your excitement is just like, yeah,
Thanks.
off the charts. So I'm very excited to see what you end up doing.
Thank you.
So, Gabrielle, how do listeners find your events? Are they only listed on your website, or do you use like Eventbrite or something? How can they find when you do things?
I primarily list them on my website and also announce them on Instagram. But so yeah, they are I sell the tickets through my website is the easy answer. And then I post them. I announce them on Instagram, but I also have an email newsletter that people can sign up to. And I almost always give subscribers at least 1 day advance access to tickets, and often also a discount. Not always, but try to when I can. And that there's a email sign up or a newsletter sign up form on just like the homepage of the website if people want to go there and sign up. Instagram and the website are the most direct ways to find out about events.
Great. So if our listeners are looking for something to do around here in the Boston area, please check out Gabrielle and all her events. And then we look forward to when you open your retail store.
Thank you.
Are you still
Yeah.
you're going to call it First Crush, the store?
Yes. Sticking
Great.
with the name.
Great. Well, we
I
thank you
can't
very
wait
much.
to pay a visit when it's open.
Please do. Hopefully,
do.
I don't want to jinx myself, but I'm hoping for August that we'll be permitted and ready to go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to us today on The Wonderful World of Wine. We have been your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lenzi, with our special guest today, Gabrielle Malina from First Crush Boston. You can find our past episodes on SoundCloud and iTunes, and our website is thewww.wine. We are supported by Franklin Public Radio, and you can find us on social media at The Wonderful World of Wine. Cheers!
Cheers.